Welcome to Improving Sales Performance, a podcast highlighting tips and insights aimed at helping sales organizations realize and maybe even exceed their goals. Here, we chat with thought leaders, experts, and gurus who have years of sales experience from a wide range of industries. I'm your host, Matt Sunshine, CEO at the Center for Sales Strategy, a sales performance consulting company. In this episode, we're exploring how a company successfully align their sales and marketing teams to maximize their efforts of their sellers. The great Andrew Sims, CRO at SentriLock, and Trey Morris, VP Senior Consultant here at CSS, are joining me to break down that journey. Both bring such great points to the table, like why you don't have to make Mount Everest-sized changes in order to achieve sales and marketing alignment, how marketing should help prepare your sales team for battle, and finally, why all great companies have a singular mission from which all marketing, branding, and content can be drawn from. With that, let's get the conversation going. So, Andrew, in your experience, what were some of the initial signs that you saw that sales and marketing were not aligned in your company? Did this lead to any specific challenges that you were having to deal with?
So I had a really, I think, unique perspective when I came in to SentriLock as the head of sales. Because I had been a customer of SentriLock before I came here. So I had gone through the sales journey and the sales cycle myself, but then I had also gone and worked at a organization that had SentriLock for a while. So I knew it from both the having navigated the onboarding and new customer process, as well as the retention and renewing the contract process. And so when I came in, I had a lot of perspective, I think, of the good and the bad about how we approached conversations with customers, how we brought up negotiating and kind of working through the retention as well as the new business cycle. And I also had, I think, a unique perspective about how people buy products within organized real estate and technology products for real estate. So I think in the first 3 months, we made a lot of changes within the sales team, both from a personnel perspective, as well as kind of putting a process in place that was more than go get lead, go talk to lead, nurture lead. And if they say yes, great. If they don't, wait 3-4 years until they're ready again, right? And, I think what I wanted to do was be a lot more, I don't want to say forceful, but at least a lot more persistent in how we kind of found those valid business reasons for people, and also found people other than just the main gatekeeper to express those valid business reasons too. Because in our industry, the gatekeeper doesn't use our product. It's the people that the gatekeeper represents that actually use our product, right? And so, if I'm selling them on how a lockbox works or how our system works, they might say, oh, great, cool, sounds good. Whereas if I'm talking to a realtor or a broker or somebody who uses it every day, they're going to have a different perspective. So we had none of that. We had none of that content. We had none of that script. We had none of that infrastructure of kind of like how to have those types of conversations. And so, obviously I knew of you guys and your agency and the Center for Sales Strategy, and had followed some of the blogs and other things that you guys had created. And I was like, what these guys are talking about is infrastructure. What they're talking about is process and procedure. Trey's known me a long time. I am not a process and procedure kind of guy, but I respect it. And I respect the fact that you need to have organization in order to grow an organization. So I think when I realized that I had none of these things before me, I needed to find somebody or some people that could come in and say, okay, we don't have to rip out all the plumbing here. We just maybe need to like redo the tile in the bathroom. And I think what Trey and what your team brought to us as a company was perspective that This is not a massive Mount Everest that you have to climb, that you can make very small incremental changes philosophically as well as tactically, and get yourself back on track.
Yeah, Trey, anything to add? Yeah.
Yeah. So when we engaged and started working together, I went to Birmingham and met with Andrew and the team, and I met the marketing people, and it quickly became very apparent that they were not on the same page with Andrew and his sales team. And I went to Andrew and I said, we need to get this aligned. And he absolutely agreed. And it was a struggle for about a year of getting everything in line to make sure that sales and marketing really understood each other. The sales team knew who the audience was, who knew who the prospect was, knew what their needs were. Marketing didn't. And that was a big problem in the communication strategy that they were putting out on behalf of the sales team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So doing enough of these types of podcasts, I hear, sales doesn't understand, marketing doesn't understand, right? Both have their perspective, and from their perspective, they're 100% correct. So let's dive a little bit deeper. What were some of the biggest roadblocks that you faced in fostering and nurturing that communication and that collaboration, that collaborative effort between sales and marketing? What were some of the roadblocks?
Well, I think the biggest one was simply organizational hierarchy. At the time, I was not managing the marketing team directly. They were housed underneath a different department completely. And, there was sometimes outside input, like they would solicit input from me and the sales team, but it was more of kind of like, let's get some suggestions from sales. And I think also I tell people all the time, I am in sales, but I am a marketer. Like I classify myself as a full stack marketing person who just happens to be decent at sales presentations. But I always feel like I wear the marketing hat first and foremost, right? And that's why I love this new era of revenue operations and chief revenue and VP of revenue world, because it's kind of like those of us who are good at sales don't have to call ourselves salespeople some days. Right. We can still pretend that we're marketing people. But we get to kind of own the whole customer journey there, which is exciting, right? But I think probably the biggest obstacle was, number one, they didn't have that understanding of kind of who I was and who I could be within the organization. So I mean, Trey and I basically had to build what revenue operations and Andrew as the chief revenue officer was going to be at SentriLock, right? We had historically, sales and marketing had been together, and then sales and marketing were separate, and then they were together, and then they were separate. There had never really been this kind of understanding institutionally within the company of where, and frankly, marketing was treated as the communications department. Make a newsletter, send an email blast, and when I came in, I very much tried to push this idea that, there's communications, there's corporate communications, and then there's demand generation, right? And that I wanted the marketing team to be solely focused on demand gen and sales enablement, right? And so we had to so I had to first gain control of the marketing team, which I did. We had some movement on the management team, and it opened up that team to not have a leader, which I then quickly grabbed it and pulled it into my org and said, this makes sense. And my CEO at the time was like, yes, it makes sense. Let's do it. And so we really locked that in. But that was probably the biggest hurdle, was trying to have these conversations about marketing when I was not directly leading that effort. And Trey remembers those days where we felt like we were having to convince people to do things. I think the second thing was that at the time, our marketing team structure, and again, I was not in charge. we tried to build out an internal agency. Like we tried to put a person in every single possible function that we would just like assembly line and conveyor belt marketing, right? And that was not it was not good from a human capital standpoint, but it was also just not productive from an output standpoint. Like we just weren't getting things done, and our Monday board was just growing and growing and growing, and the backlog was growing. And so finally, I was just like, you know what? I've got a really great agency partner here in Birmingham, a friend of mine. I was like, I'm going to outsource like 75% of this. And we did it. We pulled the trigger on it in the kind of second quarter of this year, and we have not looked back. Like they've been a great Dot Edison. They've been a great partner for us and just getting creative work done. Right. So that was not that was not apparent at that time, that we didn't need a 7-person marketing team inside of SentriLock. It just was not productive. So I think, again, to answer your question, there were a lot of internal roadblocks. I think there was just a lot of structure and hierarchy, as well as competing thoughts of what marketing represented within the company. And I think we're past all that now. I think we have absolute alignment here. And, I think we all realize and we've all accepted the fact, which I'm sure every marketing person who listens to this podcast will be like, tell me your magic, Yoda. Sales has finally realized that marketing is going to tell them what to say, who to say it to, and when to say it. And that the job of the salesperson is to deliver those messages, run the sequence, keep the cadence alive and close the deal, but that marketing is going to prepare you for battle, and it's your job to go capture the flag.
So I've been taking some notes because I know that people that are listening to this are probably going to want to kind of break this down and go, okay, so what are the strategies that I can implement? Like, what are the specific things that, if as I'm listening to this story, that I could take away and do? So let me restate them, and then Trey, if you want to comment on them, maybe that's a good way to add some life to what I'm saying, or add some color to what I'm saying. So Andrew, a few of the things that you did is you really defined what the job is. It's no longer, the marketing role is no longer a corporate communications job. It's more of a demand generation job. The second thing that you did is you took stock of what are we really good at doing and what are we not as good at doing. And you outsourced and brought in expertise where you needed to, versus believing that, boy, we can do everything on our own. And then the third thing, the last thing, is you implemented a playbook that everyone understands what their job is in implementing this playbook. Fair, Trey?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what he did. First of all, he had to take over marketing because the person running marketing wasn't really doing the marketing. I mean, we would have so many conversations where I felt like I was talking Andrew off a ledge because of the frustration that he had with, the number of people they had, the amount of money they were investing in those people. And then the thing that was a kicker was he'd call and he'd be like, okay, should it take a month to put together a 15-second social media video? And I'm like, no, it should take a day or two. He's like, well, it's taking a month. And I'm like, that's not right. And then he would tell me how much it cost. And I'm like, oh no, that's not right. And he was so frustrated. And so, but he finally was able to get in control. He was able to move those resources around. He was able to figure out what the messaging was, get them on that, outsource it to a very good agency in Birmingham that was going to be more efficient, more effective, and much faster, which would give the tools and resources that the sales team needed to actually start to, go after and have the activity to their prospects like they needed to. And it's working so well.
Yeah. Well, and Trey, I'll just say, Matt, Trey, I felt like Trey was like the man on the island. He was Tom Hanks on Castaway liking all of our Facebook posts. I would look at stuff and he'd be like, well, there's Trey. He liked it. Trey liked it. And I finally went back and, I was like, look, I love Trey, but like, I need more people to like our content than just Trey. We pay Trey to like our content.
Hey, I did a good job, man. I liked every single one of them on LinkedIn.
He earned that top fan badge on Facebook very well. But no, you're exactly right. It was tough. There were some dark days where I was just like, I don't know if I can break through this, And meanwhile, Matt, what's crazy about it is that we're closing so much business. Like we're continuing to be successful on the sales front, but we just can't get it right in the back end, which I think is what drove me crazy, because it's like I want to feel like the machine is working and we're not just like winging it here. Especially knowing that we were looking at and are still looking at launching into adjacent marketplaces, right? I think one thing that it's worth noting for anybody listening, because I think our business is very unique. I tell people all the time, when I recruit salespeople, I'm like, welcome to the easiest sales job you'll ever have. We're in a very niche industry with a very niche product, and there's a singular competitor. And so the only job is that if they're not with you, they're with them. So go do sales. Right. And so I think that's what was going to be daunting. What was daunting for me was that if I go into other spaces that are busy and have lots of competitors, where I can't rely on my institutional knowledge or my baked in contacts from 10 years as a customer and in the industry, and I have to cold prospect and I have to run the scripts and I have to do all these things, I don't have that written down anywhere. Like there is no playbook. There is nothing for somebody to go out and pitch SentriLock to anybody outside of realtor world, right? So I think that's ultimately where, I had the executive push, Andrew, go find new ponds to fish in. But then I had the reality of the fact that it's like, well, I can't build the blueprints. I can't design the blueprints for this because I don't have any control over it. So again, I think once we got that control in, like the world changed. And I think once we made the organizational changes, everything, the sun got a little bit brighter. And I think sitting here now, 2 weeks into the tenure of my new sales manager, because I was going to say another thing that, people that are looking for advice, one thing is that if you ever find yourself holding the gun, holding the bayonet, holding the flag, also handling the ammo box, you need to fire yourself from one of those jobs. And there were many times where I feel like Trey was trying to very passively tell me, like, you cannot be the sales leader and the individual contributor at the same time. Like that is not
passive about my instructions on that.
It was pretty aggressive. But he was right, and it took me some maturation. It took me some kind of come to Jesus moments, as we say here in Alabama, before I finally realized, like, look, my skill lies at organizing the RevOps engine, not carrying out the tactical side of it. And so I think a lot of times people in marketing and sales, they are multifaceted. They are multi-talented. They can sell, they can market, they can do all these things, and they think that they can and should, right? But you have to build the team. You have to build the team. You have to build SEAL Team 6 around yourself, right? And I think that's what I finally have now, is that I have a good sales leader. I can focus on the tactical, like the strategy side for once. Like I can actually think about those things because I know that she is focused on, once I give the orders, she's going to tell the soldiers where to go. And so I think that again was another roadblock, was that I was trying to be 17 different positions while mastering none of them.
Yeah, I'll share that I think that this is a reoccurring theme that we see again and again, certainly on this podcast, where the solution to any challenge is, we just need to hire somebody. And so we hire people, and then over time, that job that they were hired to do is no longer necessary. but they're really good people and you like them. And so you retrofit them into doing something else. And then before you know it, everybody's doing everything and nobody's really excelling at anything. And I think that you're articulating the real world of that in your examples. So I do have a follow-up question. So you're having success. Let's go a little deeper on that. How do you measure or keep track of or know? How do you measure the impact of this improved sales and marketing alignment that you've built? Do you have any specific metrics that you look at?
Yes, hours of sleep. No, I'm not losing them anymore. No, I think the biggest thing you're exactly. It's a great question, and I wish I had a equally as great answer. We're kind of at that point. We're kind of at that exact moment where I'm kind of asking myself, all right, how can I show quantitatively that I've done something around here, right? Like, I mean, the obvious KPI is, money, right? We've increased annual revenue. We've added annual revenue. We've increased our market share, right? We've shortened the gap between us and them. Those are all easy, quantifiable kind of metrics to have. One thing that we are, and Trey knows about this journey too. And I guess if I'm counting roadblocks, this is perfect therapy in time for my therapy tomorrow. But to look back on this, we never really had a CRM. We never really had a kind of dashboard and kind of a place to look at all this stuff. Like, I mean, the people who came before me were just kind of dialing it into spreadsheets, right? And I said, I want to get out of spreadsheets. I want to put everything in one place. I want a single source of truth. And that in itself was a journey because we don't have, as maybe a sophisticated BI as I wish that we did. But I have finally committed to HubSpot. I'm in love with HubSpot. You guys, Elise and Trey, have done an amazing job helping us just kind of push that over the line. And maybe I was the one holding out. But now I'm in love with it. I'm absolutely in love with it. And now I can't wait to spread the gospel. But I think that was another major part of something that we didn't have, was a way to track velocity, a way to track how many emails it takes, how quickly we get from introduction conversation to let's start talking about that this marriage is going to happen, right? And so I think as we get more of that data inside of HubSpot and we kind of capture more of that kind of intent data, as I call it, right? I think we're going to learn a lot more about whether or not marketing is having an impact. Because right now, I couldn't tell you that marketing has ever contributed to a sale. And I want to be able to quantify that. I want to be able, because like, if you look at my customer acquisition costs, it's crazy, right? Because I'm looking at a whole marketing budget versus, perhaps individual accounts and things like that. Yeah. So I want to be able to get some of those metrics there. I think the eternal struggle between chief revenue and chief finance is whether you really needed to sponsor that event in order to get that client. And so I want to be able to, have that number.
Trey, anything to add to that?
No, I mean, he definitely is working on it. It's been a struggle because, operationally they just didn't do it. And so he is doing on the right steps. He's bringing in the right people. He's starting to measure the right activities that'll then give us the output. And so it's definitely helped a lot, and it's just going to get better, especially the more he gets ingrained with HubSpot and really is able to measure every little activity that is going to end up giving them meetings, proposals, and sales.
Yeah, excellent. All right, my last question, and while we were talking, I was trying to think of that quote from Mad Men about how you know if advertising works. There's I'll find it later, or maybe I'll put it in.
It
just does.
Make your quote 50% of my advertising works, but we don't know which 50.
Yeah, no, it's not that one, but that's also a good one. But it's like you do something and you see results happen, and so it works. So it was something just so
you never knew you were marketed to.
Right, you never knew. It just happened, right? All right, final question, and maybe you can both chime in on this one. So we've talked a lot about what you've done past. We've talked to get to where you are today. We've talked about the results that you're seeing as a result of the work that you've done. Let's look forward. How do you, what sort of systems, process, tactics, whatever that right word is, what sort of things have you put into place so that you can remain aligned, sales and marketing can remain aligned going into the future? Make sure that communication continues so that you don't see drift happen. Give us some wisdom on that.
I'll start right where I ended on the last answer. I think unified under HubSpot or, the platform, that technology is massive. Where I feel like everything's going into one place. We're able to write the sequences. We're able to assign, the cadence structure we want to leads and influencers, and then just have the sales team go and do that. That's what is exciting to me, right? Because now I can focus on the strategy and the writing and the crafting of the message, and know that there is the implementer in my sales manager to go and put that into action on the battlefield, right? Like that is going to be huge. The second thing is that we finally have this kind of structure in place. The biggest thing we have to do next is perfect the next stage of the customer journey, right? The handoffs, the implementation, the post-launch, continuing. I mean, it's interesting. I just was on another conversation about the fact that we have a 67 NPS, right? Which is huge. That's great. We have a 96% satisfaction rate from our current customers about their account manager, right? But I also know that there are conversations that happen where frustration and issues are still present. So I'm trying to get a handle on which narrative is true, right? And again, my account team, the account management team, is not recording those conversations within the environment where we could then see trends, right? Hey, if 15 people are asking about the same thing, we need to make content about it. If that's an issue that's out in the marketplace, we need to make that part of our sales conversation. Again, these are things that billion-dollar companies do that have this kind of sentiment and, intimate knowledge of who their customer and users are and the data within that. And, our goal as a company is to go from a $40 million a year company to a $100 million a year company in the next 5 years, right? Well, all of these things that we're talking about today are going to have to be flawless and perfect, I think, in order to really take that to the next step. And that's not to mention the other parts of it, product and, ops and all those other things. But, as much to my dismay, I don't get to control the world. So, I think showing that my house is in order will go a long way culturally, to kind of present to people, hey, there is a promised land of stability out there. Yes, you're going to have to make some tough decisions and tough calls, but at the same time, getting to a place of peace where I feel like we finally are, it will go a long way. But I think to answer your question, it's the processes that we're going to put into place. It's the platforms that we're going to put into place, because, I tell every sales rep, 80% of selling this lockbox is that it opens. The other 20% is that they like you, you're solving a problem for them, and you're bringing them a solution that they didn't have before. So if I can perfect the messaging on that 20% for them, as long as the box opens, I'm going to keep making money. And the box does open, by the way.
Trey, anything to add on what are the necessary things that need to be in place to ensure that this sort of success continues into the future and that drift doesn't happen and modifications are made along the way that need to be made?
Yeah, I like to say that all great companies can be described as missional. They have one objective, they have one mission, they have one destination, and everyone is working together for that one singular outcome. And everything they do can be drawn back from the ultimate destination so that every ad campaign, every sales call, every new client, every new branding piece, every new handout, everything that they do must be focused on that one thing. And there has to be continual correction if they ever get off track, because a 1% misalignment can end up being thousands of miles away from the actual destination that you wanted. And so everyone on the team has to understand that, they have to believe that, and they have to be a part of that.
Yeah, excellent. Andrew and Trey, thank you so much for your time today. I mean, this 30 minutes went by like in a flash, right? I just looked up at the clock and I saw it was 30 minutes. And I was like, wow, that was super fast. And that's because your willingness to be so open and forthright with your experiences just makes it so powerful. So thank you so much for joining us. Anyone that would like to reach out to either Andrew or Trey, we'll invite you to do so by putting their LinkedIn and contact information in the show notes, so you'll be able to find them there. And again, thank you everyone that has listened or watched this. Really appreciate it. Love sharing great insights on how businesses are having success on these episodes. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Improving Sales Performance. This has been Improving Sales Performance. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, join us every week by clicking the subscribe button. For more on the topics covered in the show, visit our website, thecenterforsalesstrategy.com. There, you can find helpful resources and content aimed at improving your sales performance.